Hello everyone, happy Friday. Welcome to the Mylio Photos coffee break. My name is Angela and today we're going to be talking about albums in Mylio Photos. Whether you're new here or you've been a Mylio user for quite some time, hopefully this session will bring you some insight on how to use albums, how to get the most use out of them, and basically just make your life, your organization run better. So before we jump into today's topics, I do want to let you know about some other things we have going on for you. And I realized about 10 seconds before this was supposed to start that I didn't update my graphic here. But next week we will have Q&A on Tuesday and Thursday. These are live sessions where you're able to jump in, ask questions, and whether you're just looking for workflow tips or you have something you're not sure is working quite right, feel free to drop into these sessions. Everyone is welcome. These are at 11:30 a.m. Pacific, 2:30 p.m. Eastern. Those are Tuesdays and Thursdays. On Fridays, we have these sessions called coffee breaks, and we will have another coffee break next week as well. I don't remember off the top of my head what the topic is. Hopefully, Lori's here. She can pop that into the chat, and you guys are always welcome to join those as well. Short tutorials followed up by time for questions, just like today. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into today's topic, which is albums made simple, easy ways to group and share your photos. So albums are one of the most flexible and easy to use things in Mylio Photos. And I think if you haven't used them before, you're going to find them be very, very useful as part of your overall organization strategy. So the goals for today are for you to walk away being able to understand the difference between folders and albums, how to build and manage your albums, what the albums are good for. I like to use them for projects, my favorite images, and for sharing. We'll talk about navigating nested albums and how to keep your collections tidy. And then finally, we'll dive a little bit into shared albums. And that's the really fun part. Once you've curated these collections, they are super easy to share. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to talk about is the difference between folders and albums. This is a really key thing to understand when using Mylio Photos. And really just about any other image management software out there. There's typically going to be a folder, a place where your stuff actually lives, and then some sort of virtual organization. In our case, that's albums. So folders are the containers that actually reference where your pictures live on your hard drive. This is a physical location, so your folders are your actual pictures. And there's a direct connection between what you see in Mylio Photos and what you see if you open up Finder or Explorer on your computer. The difference here with folders and albums is that albums are virtual. Folders, on the other hand, they mirror your computer's file structure. So if you go into Finder or Explorer, you're going to see those exact same folders that you see in the folders view in Mylio Photos. They're tied to your folders file system. And the best reason to use folders is, well, you want to have a place to put things. It's the place where you store and manage your photos, and it's recommended to have a structured hierarchy. I like to use a date-based hierarchy, and then for things like projects and family lines and family history and all these different things, that's where I really leverage albums, because I can have all of my stuff organized, very structured in my folders, and then I can group things however I want to in albums without having to physically move or duplicate anything. Things to consider is when you change things of your folder structure, those actually make changes in your file system. So again, that direct connection is really important to understand with folders. Albums, on the other hand, are virtual collections. These are things that you could group for a specific purpose. So your Hawaii vacation, your family history lines from different sides of your family or different groupings of family members, people's birthdays, anniversaries. There's lots of different reasons why you might want to create an album. So they're great for projects and specific things where you might want to have a picture in more than one place. Albums let you do this because it is virtual, so you can take one picture and put it into as many albums as you want without physically moving or creating duplicate storage, taking up additional space on your hard drives. That's a really, really important thing to understand. And they are extremely flexible. So virtual collections, they do not move your original files. They're a way to group things without changing their physical location. They're best for thematic collections. I mentioned a few other examples. A few of the things I've used them for are my photography portfolio, different competitions I've entered for my photography, home renovations. That's a really good one. So if you have before and after pictures or showing the progress through a home renovation or something like that, or a project that you're working on, you want to show those steps, this is a great way to pull all those images from differing time periods into one place. And it makes it easy to organize across those folders where things actually live, and makes it super simple to view and share. Some key considerations here: when you remove a photo from an album, it does not delete the original. So you can remove things, add things from albums. You're not messing with where things actually live on your hard drive. This is just that virtual organization. So some of the key differences here between folders and albums: folders are directly tied to your file system. So your macOS Finder, your Windows Explorer, that's where your folders are. Mylio is just showing you those folders. Albums, on the other hand, are not tied to your file system. When you move files around, with folders, you are moving them physically on your hard drive. With albums, again, it's virtual. You are not physically moving anything. As far as organizing them where they are physically stored, that's what you do with folders. When you're organizing things in albums, it does not touch their physical location. If you want to organize by a theme or a project, my preference is always to organize via albums. I like to keep my folders pretty structured, and you can keep that structure broad, so you can go by year, you can go by month, whatever makes best sense to you. Keep your folders in that date-based system, and then use albums to do those thematic and project-based collections. And the beauty of this is both of these, when you're doing the organization, they're accessible from all of your Mylio devices, so you can work with your folders and you can work with your albums, whether you're on your computer, your phone, your tablet, all of that. So it's very, very easy to work with both of these options for your organization on all of your devices. All right, so when should you use folders and when should you use albums? So use folders when you want to manage your computer's file structure. If you're wanting to reorganize things in Finder or Explorer, use folders in Mylio. That's going to, when you update something in Mylio in your folders, it gets updated on your hard drive. So your hard drives, your vault drives, and so forth. When you want to keep a structured hierarchy, that year event, those subfolders, that's a great time to use folders. And when you want any changes that you're doing to be reflected in your file system, again, folders are that tie to your file system. On the other hand, it's best to use albums when you want to group things without moving them. Again, these are virtual collections. You can take pictures from all different parts of your library, put them into an album, and you haven't physically moved anything, and you haven't created duplicates that you later have to clean up. So it's very, very flexible. It's great for those thematic collections. Again, pulling things from different places, getting them into one place so you can easily find them. And it's a non-destructive organization method, meaning you can move things around. It's not going to change or modify how things are organized on your hard drive. So I like to use a hybrid system of both. I think both of these options are best. So when you want to use folders for your logical, consistent hierarchy, great. Do that, get that set up. And then when you want to start organizing projects and themes, that's when you're going to dive in to your albums. Hopefully that all makes sense. And what I do recommend here is keep your folder structure as simple as possible, and then use your albums for short-term and evolving projects. That's going to make a very well-rounded, flexible, useful organization for most people. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into Mylio Photos, and let's talk about how to create albums, add media to those albums, and how to get around the albums view. So I'm going to jump over to Mylio Photos, and right now I am in my albums view. Go ahead and get that off the screen over there. And what you're looking at are my albums that I've already curated. Over on the left, I have the navigation open, and you can see over here on the very left side, I've got the albums icon highlighted. Now, if you happen to navigate into some sub-albums, so let's go here into this one. This one has several different sub-albums. If I ever want to get back to the top level of my albums, just double-click the albums icon here in the left sidebar, and that takes you back to the very top. If you want to hide this navigation, you can click the navigation here on the left, and that just gives you a visual list of all of your different albums. So I can expand these and I can see which ones have sub-albums. So it looks kind of like the folder organization where you can have albums and sub-albums, and they nest inside of each other. Creating a new album is really quite simple. If you're already in the albums view and you have the navigation open, there's a new album button here. You can also just right click over here on the black area and say new album. And that lets you create a new collection to start organizing things in. Also, if you are out in your library and you're navigating around stuff, and let's say I want to create a cats album, I can simply select my cat pictures, right click on those, and say add to album. And from here, I can choose an existing album that I have, or I can say new album, and we can just say cats and say create. It goes ahead and puts that album there. I say continue, and these pictures have now been added to my cats album. I can jump over here to my albums view, and you'll see we now have a new album of cats. And then later on, as I find more cat pictures that I want to put into this album, I can go ahead and add them that exact same way that I did, and from any view that I'm in. So I can be in people view, I can be in a folder, I can be anywhere in my library, and I can say, oh, here's some more cat pictures. Let me right click on those, and I can say add to album. Cats is already selected. If it wasn't, I can just click here on albums and I can scroll down the list. There's cats and say continue. And those have now been added to that album. Now, let's say I want to go ahead and create a sub album inside of cats. I can do that really easily and go, okay, I want just pictures of Macallan. And I can go ahead and select those 3 images, right click on those. And again, because this is not physically duplicating anything and it's not physically moving anything, these pictures can be in more than one album. So I can go ahead and say add to album. I'm already in cats right now, but let's say I want to add a sub album inside of cats. I'll say new album and say Macallan. And say create. There's Macallan and continue. And I've now created a sub album with those images. So let's go ahead and pop over here to my albums view. And you'll see here, here's my cats. I'm going to go ahead and make this bigger so you guys can see it. Let's select that. And let's just drag this up. I'm making this bigger, so hopefully this works well on the screen. So here's cats, and up in the upper left corner, you're gonna see a number, an album, and another number. This first number that's the number of total media inside this album and all of its nested albums. The next one here says this is a sub album, and there is one sub album inside of it. And then down here at the bottom, we've got our title, which we can change. And the dates are whatever dates are covered by the media that you've put inside that album. So if those pictures are from, let's say, 1985 to 1992, those are the dates that are going to be showing here if you've changed the dates on those scan photos and so forth. Up in the upper right-hand corner, you can add categories to this. So if you are making use of categories, you can categorize the album. One thing to note is this puts the category on the album, but it does not categorize the media inside of the album. So it doesn't inherit. That's just one thing to know as you're going through and doing that. That's probably a bigger topic for a whole different coffee break, but I wanted to let you know that was there. And then once you're inside this, let's go ahead and double click on this. You can see I've got a bunch of loose media that I added to this album. And here's the one for Macallan. Now from in here, again, there's a lot of other things that I can do. I can right click in this area and I can say new album. And let's just say Glenn Levitt, which is my other cat. There we go. And create. And I've now created another sub album inside of this. I could then take these pictures here. Let's go here and take a look at all of these loose pictures. And these ones here that are just of Glenn, I can right click on this and say add to album and go back up here to cats. There's Glenn Levitt and continue. And now if I go back a level, you can see here's Glenn, here's Mac, and then here's all of those loose pictures. So pictures can be in multiple places with albums. And again, it's not creating duplicates. It's not physically moving things on your hard drive. So it's very flexible. And then over here in the left in the navigation, you can see here's my cats. If I go ahead and open this up, I can see Glenn Levitt. I can see Macallan. And it's just a really easy way to go ahead and navigate through these. All right, so let's talk a little bit about shared albums. Once you've taken the time to curate different albums in your library, it's really, really useful for sharing. So if you're out and about, you have your phone and you run into a friend or a family member like, hey, I want to show you the 10, 15, 20 best pictures for my last vacation. Here's the album. Pop in there on your phone. You can show it to them. That's one way to do it. And it makes it very easy to find those things. But you're not necessarily going to run into that friend or that family member and be able to show them on your phone. You want to give them a really easy way to view your pictures without having to download an application, without having to, download an app on their phone. Basically, what this does is it creates a private web gallery where you can upload optimized versions of your pictures and send that link to anybody you want. We call them semi-private because they're not indexed by search engines, but it can be as widely shared as you want. So it is a web page. So I do recommend putting things up there that are, shall we say, family friendly, but send them out to whoever you want. You can text them, you can post it on social media. And again, it's about how wide you cast that net as to how private this particular link is. The beauty of this is you can share up to 1,000 photos per album. You can change and edit this album after you've published it. So if you want to add a few more pictures or take a few pictures down, or you added some face tags and some keywords and a few other, maybe some captions and things like that, you can go ahead and republish it and it updates that information. They're unique URLs. And the coolest thing here is the people you share this with don't need a Mylio account. So it doesn't make them jump through any additional hurdles. All they have to do is click on the link that you send them and they can see all of your pictures. It's really, really very cool. So let's go ahead and create a shared album. I'm going to jump over here into Mylio and let's go ahead and go back. And let's go back to that cats folder just because we can. So if I want to go in here and I want to share Macallan being goofy, this is what we call meerkatting. When he gets interested in something, he sits back on his hind legs and it's just hilarious. So let's say I want to share this gallery of Mac being goofy. What I'm going to do is open up the right panel here and go into my info. And there's a button here for Publish Shared Album. So from this point, I can go ahead and add my captions. I can add, if you need to change dates, if you're working with historical photos, things like that. Make sure you've added all the metadata you want. And then go over here and click Publish Shared Album. You're going to agree to the terms of service and the right to publish content. There are links here if you want to read what those are all about. But essentially what you're saying is you have permission to publish these photos, that they're your own, and that you're not breaking any laws. You're not putting anything up there that is illicit. So once you go ahead and do that, you can go ahead and click Continue. One other thing to note is you can put different types of media into albums. You can put documents, you can put videos in albums in Mylio, but when you do a shared album, it only shares the photo. So that's something to be aware of. So let's go ahead and click Continue. And then you have a few options as to how you want that shared gallery to look. And I'm going to go ahead and just say white. And I don't want people to be able to download my pictures. If you do want them to, you can go ahead and create that downloadable archive. Again, these are optimized quality images, not your full resolution images. The downloadable archive will give them the option to download the pictures in that gallery. Again, they'll be at the optimized quality, which is going to be a JPEG. It's going to be printable up to a 5x7. So it's a good quality image, but it is not your full resolution image. You can choose whether you want to have a watermark on these. Safe share, what that does, if you turn that on, it strips all your metadata. So in this case, I might go ahead and turn that on because maybe I want to share this on Facebook, these funny pictures of my cat, but I don't want to share where I live and other personally identifying information that might be in my metadata. So these are cell phone photos. I always have the location turned on, which means that information's embedded in my pictures. And when I share it, sometimes I want to turn that off. So Safe Share strips all that metadata from the pictures before sharing it. If you want, you can go ahead and turn that off and you can choose whatever specific metadata you do want to include. So maybe you want to include camera EXIF, caption and title, keywords, ratings, copyright, and IPTC, but maybe I don't want the names of the people in the pictures to be shared or the place that it was taken. So you can be specific about what you want included, or you can just say, you know what, I'm kind of in a hurry, click Safe Share on, and it strips that metadata. So let's go ahead and click Share. And what that does is it uploads the optimized versions of these. And in a moment, I'll get a link that I can put out there and look at these wacky pictures of my cat. So we'll give it just a moment and we'll let that upload. Once that's done, here in the right column, I can always make changes and republish. I can email the link. If I want to say, pull this down, I let a couple of people see it. They saw it. Okay. I can then say stop sharing and that pulls it down. So let's go ahead and click on this. I'm going to go ahead and copy that link And I'm gonna go ahead and open up my web browser, and there we go. So there's my shared album. This is what people will get when you send them that link. So again, you can send that link via a text message. You can copy it into a text, put it into an email, and so forth. So from there, I can click on a picture. I can see a larger version. I can see my details that I did decide to include. And I can go ahead and scroll through these. And you can see the wacky pictures of my cat. And I can then share this link with anybody I want. This is also a really cool way to do, like I said, projects that you're working on, home renovations. If you have a project that you've taken pictures of the progress so far and you're about to bring in a contractor and you want to say, hey, this is what we've done, here's where we're at, and then here's what we want to do, send them the link with all of the pictures of that project so far so they know what they're getting into. So there's lots of different ways that you can use these. It's great for sharing family history photos. I can show you here really quick under my, let's go ahead and go back to my top level. And let's see here, up at the top, I've got my quick shares, and I have in here some that were family history pictures. I've shared these with my entire family, stuff that I've scanned, and it's a great way for them to be able to see pictures that they've never seen before. These are things I scanned from my grandma's collection. And so shared albums are just a really wonderful way to be able to get content out there to the people that you want without having to necessarily publish everything. And you're not publishing the originals, you're publishing optimized versions, and it's up to you whether you want them to be downloadable or not. Now, let's say I want to stop sharing any of these things. I can go in here in Mylio and say stop sharing. And usually within a few minutes, that website will no longer be active. And it goes ahead and pulls those things down, and it keeps it, again, semi-private. So you are in control of what you're sharing and when. So I think that's pretty much everything for shared albums. Let's go ahead and jump back over here to the presentation. Just a few privacy tips for using shared albums. Just a reminder, they're hosted on non-index web pages, meaning search engines are not going to find them. You can't search them online, so nobody's going to go to Google or whatever they're looking for, and they're not going to be able to find them. They're not indexed by AI, any of that. They're only accessible to whoever you give that link to. I would suggest being cautious with where you post that link, because anybody who has that link can then share that link, and then that can go pretty wide. So that is up to you who you share it with and when and where. You can also unshare at any time to revoke the access. So if you're going, you know what, somebody just posted that on Facebook and I don't want them to have that there, you can go and unshare the gallery and take it down. And then even if somebody clicks on that link, they're no longer going to be able to access those photos. All right, so to kind of wrap things up, just a few things to take away from this presentation. Albums are the easiest way to group photos without moving files. Folders are for your structure. That's your direct link to your hard drive, whereas albums are for flexibility. They're virtual. They don't duplicate anything, and they don't take up any additional space on your hard drive. Use albums for things like trips, projects, and other curated sets of images that you might have for a very wide variety of things. You can use them for so many different purposes. And then finally, when you're ready to share the media from those albums, it's very simple to use a shared album, create that custom web page that you can then give that link to family and friends and show off some of those best pictures. It's a lot of fun. It's very, very easy. And if you haven't yet tried it, I really do hope you give it a try. I want to thank you guys for joining me. And hopefully this was a useful session, gave you some ideas of how to use albums to improve your organization and get the most out of Mylio Photos. I think they're a lot of fun to use. They're very versatile. And with the implementation of shared albums, makes it very, very simple to get those images out in a very easy to share way with friends and family. I love that they don't have to download anything. They can just click on a link and they can view those photos. It's something that anybody in my family can do regardless of their technical ability. So give it a try. I hope it works well for you. Let us know what you think. Thank you, Lori, so much for being in the chat and helping out with the different links. Really, really appreciate it. So I will wish you guys a wonderful weekend. Have a great rest of your Friday, and we'll hopefully see you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.